Trailblazers! Welcome to the Cast with Naya podcast, the space where we explore the challenges we face as young adults and youth, as well as uncover the pathway to self-development, personal triumphs, and the extraordinary stories that make each of us uniquely awesome. In this podcast, we spark conversations that matter, share stories that resonate, and provide insights that empower you on your journey. Whether you're a student, young professional, or someone in between, this is your space to explore, grow, and emerge as the best version of yourself.
Today's episode will be talking the topic effective communication skills. And what better time than now to discuss on this amazing topic? How better do we communicate effectively as individuals, as professionals, and so on and so forth, as young people basically. We have a guest today in our midst. I'll be reading her bio shortly. She'll be sharing with us in details on how to communicate effectively as people, because it's not enough to just be speaking and talking. Are you communicating? So we'll find out in today's episode. Chinecherem Omuta is a seasoned professional public speaker and coach. Renowned for her expertise in public speaking mastery, with over 3 years of extensive experience. She has spoken at various events, including workshops, trainings, fellowship, and conferences, captivating audiences with her engaging presentations and insightful content. As a dedicated public speaking coach, Chinecherem has empowered over 1,000 individuals, ranging from undergraduates to working professionals in the art of public speaking. Her personalized coaching programs equip clients with the skills and confidence needed to command the stage effectively. For quality assurance purposes and audio fidelity, please note that this was recorded virtually.
Once again, good evening, Chinecherem, and welcome to the Cast with Naya podcast. I'm super excited to have you on the show, and I hope that this episode is going to be worth the while and, amazing. So today we're going to be discussing effective communication skills. I know this is a challenge that people are currently facing. Some people know how to communicate, but they might not know how to effectively communicate. So I think there's a thin line, a difference between just communicating and effectively communicating. So that we're going to be finding out today, how better we can communicate effectively, what skills do we need to have or put in place, what active listening skills do we need to, because I know communication is like a two-way street. There's a talking part, there's a listening part. So how do we develop the both parts and use it for effective communication? But before we commence, I just want you to say something to the house. Just a brief introduction of yourself before we commence. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much once again. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Chinecherem Omuta, and I'm a professional public speaker and public speaking coach. Basically, I help children, young talents, and working professionals become confident voices and better speakers. I'm excited to be here, like I earlier said, and I hope that today's conversation is going to be one that would help us or help everyone listening to this podcast better understand why effective communication is important, as well as how to deal with the issues or challenges that are involved in communication.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chinecherem, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for helping young people, become better in public speaking and effectively communicate. Anyway, so let's go straight. So let's go straight into what today's topic is actually about. The first question I'll have for you is, firstly, so we have a common ground. What do you think effective communication is in your own words? How would you explain it to anybody listening?
Okay, I'd say that effective communication borders around quite a number of things. But in my opinion, for a conversation or communication to be effective, then you must have been able to convey your message clearly, empathetically, to ensure that there's a mutual understanding. So you can't say something to me and I haven't understood it, and yet you say that, oh, you've been able to clearly communicate or you've been able to effectively communicate to me. No. So effective communication in simple words would be conveying your message clearly and empathetically to ensure there's a mutual understanding. Empathy is important in communication because that also in its own way allow you or allow the listener who's on the other side understand better where you're coming from.
Very, very well said. You had clearly said that communicating effectively is clearly being able to pass a message, onto the other person listening in a clear and empathetic manner, so that you both have a mutual understanding. Because you said that is absurd, to hear that people communicate and then you don't even know what the person said. You can't clearly understand what was being said. But the bottom line is that the person spoke. Okay, what did the person say? What's the understanding? Did I understand what he or she said? So with that will not be classified as effective communication. Just like you said, clearly communicating in a clear and empathetic manner. Thank you so much for answering that question. So what are the skills? How do we develop effective communication skills? How do we get to pass information in a clear and empathetic manner?
Okay, so in my public speaking classes, I like to tell my students that in developing effective communication or public speaking skills, first thing you need to do is actively listen. So in communication, you'll hardly be able to pass a message if there's no active listening. Somebody has to be doing the listening, right? So the first thing you want to do is practice how to actively listen. So you would often wonder why sometimes you would have said a whole lot of things, and the only thing the person understood from everything you said is, why are you being so silly? Meanwhile, you were trying to communicate to the person that his or her action was silly, but not exactly just saying that, oh, you're silly. You're just trying to highlight why you think that action is silly and why the person should change. So you see that in this case scenario, the person has only been able to partially listen to what he or she wants to. And when listening is not active has to be that you're not listening to defend, you're listening to communicate and understand. Two things. If you're not listening to be able to communicate better or understand the other person's viewpoint, then it's not active listening. So that's one. The second thing I would like to say is honing your nonverbal cues. So I don't know if you've attended a conference where the speaker is going on and on and on, but the person is just leaning against the podium, or the speaker is just acting like he or she was forced to come and speak, and then the person is rushing, or sometimes the person is not even smiling, the person is just standing in place and just talking, and you're like, I didn't send you here, please get it over with. Those kind of things can be a turn off. So if you want to develop effective communication, you want to make sure that you are honing your nonverbal cues. It could be as little as you leaning against the podium and just putting your hands on your chin and you're just talking. It could bore your audience. So you want to work on your nonverbal cues. And finally, I'd say refine your message with clarity. So at every presentation you'll be giving or a conversation you're having, your one goal should be to make sure there's understanding, and you can't do that without clarity, which is why you see me when you ask a question, at the end of it, I would like to rephrase what I've said and just like say it in one sentence. That way the person is able to retain better. So basically, practice active listening, hone your nonverbal cues, and consistently pass your message with clarity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Active listening, clarity, and non-verbal skills. Very, very valid point. So speaking about active listening, I know that most times is a problem for a lot of people, a lot of young people, because like you said, we always listen to defend, not to actually communicate or understand even what the person is trying to say. So how do we improve our listening skills? How do we improve upon our listening skills and be better communicators?
Okay, so for me, I'd say that to be better at listening actively, you want to do a few things. One, you want to fully focus on the speaker. You want to say, if you are having a conversation rather, with, say, a mentor, you don't want to be listening to how the mentor sounds or the random things your mentor is doing. You want to understand the message. You want to focus on the message that the speaker is saying. So if your mentor, for instance, is correcting you, if you pay so much attention to how the person is saying what they're saying, most of the times you lose the message. So you want to focus on what the person is saying and why the person is saying what he or she is saying. Yes. Secondly, I'd say you want to paraphrase for clarification. So sometimes the person could say quite a number of things and you're like, sorry, if I get you correctly, you said that this, and this. Is that correct? Then the person would affirm or say no and clarify, right? And finally, you want to withhold judgment. You don't want to hear someone say something about a subject matter and just from the very first line, you're already like, no, that's not true. What do you mean? You want to allow the person land. You want to listen thoroughly from the beginning to the end before you now say your own opinion. And remember, the goal here is not to counter. The goal is not to defend either, but the goal is to understand the person's viewpoint. So yes, some people would agree that a woman's job is to be in the kitchen. Why do you think that is so? That's what you want to do with active listening. So basically, with active listening, you want to learn to focus on the message of the speaker, paraphrase for clarification, and also withhold judgment. Don't be quick to judge.
No, very, very well said. So in scenarios where we have conflict resolution, it's often a communication challenge. What strategies do you recommend for navigating conflicts constructively? I know that active listening part, and you see most times when people have debate, there's always that counter. So there's always this, no, that. So back and forth. And sometimes, or most of the times, you don't really see active listening in display there, or situations where there are conflicts. So that's why I'm saying that conflict resolution is often a communication challenge. What strategies do you recommend for navigating conflicts constructively? That is to say, actively listening, not to defend, but obviously, you have to defend because it's a conflict that you're trying to resolve. So there has to be that back and forth. I don't know if I'm saying other people, but maybe we can do it in a more decent and proper way. But a lot of Nigerians, there's no grief for anybody. So there's always that back and forth. There's always that defense, and probably maybe they see it as if you're always quiet or not having anything to say, maybe you're accepting defeat. So that kind of, so a lot of that goes on. What are the strategies that you advise so that we can involve active listening, especially during conflict resolution?
Okay, thank you very much, Nene. So I'd say that when it comes to conflict or disagreements generally, there's usually a higher tendency to just want to keep fighting. So the easiest way to control or communicate better in conflicts would be first to practice empathy. So I realized one time I had a fallout. I wouldn't say fallout. Let me just say a disagreement with a friend of mine. And she said something then, that's like 3 years ago, if I remember clearly. But then it was an argument of how I don't say sorry and whatnot. And I was like, what do you mean I don't say sorry? Did I not say sorry? Did I? And we were all like going back and forth. I didn't care about how she felt or how me not saying sorry made her feel, right? At that point, I was not being empathetic, right? I was just focused on, no, I have to be the right one here. What do you mean? How can you just come and tell me that I'm not saying sorry? Do you get? So we have conversations like that where it becomes a disagreement very quickly. Yes, and you just find yourself in a setup. The funniest part about that disagreement was that it was just a random thing. Imagine like 4 different friends just and then one person just says one thing, and then the next person is like, well, that's even true. You will never. And I'm like, okay, what's happening here? I felt like I was being set up, but in honesty, right? They were saying the truth. They just didn't say the truth rightly. And even though Nigerians will say, it doesn't matter how you say me, I like to say my mind. No, calm down. I don't agree with saying your mind anyhow.
Express myself. No, I want to be real. I want to express myself.
They want to, everybody wants to, of course, everybody wants to express
anyway. Like I'm very, no, allow me, let me just express myself. I just want to expressing yourself, but is it the proper way? Are the things you're saying going to hurt the other person at the end of the day?
Exactly.
You know, how better? Exactly.
Oh my God, you just got it all. Recently, I had a conversation with a friend that really pissed me off, and in the person's defense, the person was like, I don't know how to communicate. I don't, and I'm like, that's not the point here. Are you even listening to me? So the only way we're able to come to an agreement was first, the person had to understand what I was saying. So the person had to come to a place where you're not just having a disagreement because you just want to prove you are right. I always say to my friend, when we have disagreements, the end goal is not to be right. The end goal is for provide a solution to whatever issue we're facing. You don't have to be right. I don't have to be right. We just need to find a solution that works for us both, and we'll continue living. That might sound really hard. Yes. It's hard work, let's be honest, to actually be able to still communicate effectively, especially during conflict. It's very hard. Very, very hard. But the top of it would be practice empathy. You cannot have a solution, or you cannot resolve a conflict without being empathetic. If you are not empathetic, right, you'd see that it's either one person goes on feeling like the loser, and do you get, and then or someone is feeling, no, this was not judged right. There will surely be an imbalance. And even though people say that in disagreement, 2 of you cannot be right, 2 of you cannot be right. But when you communicate clearly, yes, the other person is able to understand that, okay, it's true. In this, I was wrong. In that, you were wrong. This is what we should do better for us to be able to grow. Because, okay, let me give an instance. For instance, let me say that I can be a very stubborn person, and you, Neye, as my friend, you are like the calm one. And you feel like I'm always riding you because I'm like the stubborn person and person who is more outspoken, right? If we have to deal with a conflict resolution, and at the end of the day, I'm still the one that won in this kind of scenario, right? You feel like you were cheated because you happen to be the one who is always calm. But where we're able to highlight, why did this happen? What led to this happening? We're not going to say whose fault was it, but what triggered this? You're treating the incident. You're not dealing with the people. You're not fighting or pointing blames at who did what. You're looking at what led to this incident. So you're saying, oh, Neye is calm. Chinecherem can be stubborn. Chinecherem is not a good person. Neye is not the nicest person. But 2 of you, these traits that is not working. So next time, to speak up if you don't like when I do something. And Chinecherem, you have to listen better when Neye is talking about something you don't like. Remember, you are more outspoken than she is. So you need to listen to understand her better. That way, we're coming to a solution, as opposed to say, "No, Chichi, you're always the stubborn one. You're always the stubborn one. You will never listen. I know that you don't used to hear anything." Once you start attacking the person, you have lost it. You can never communicate anything clearly in that scenario. So generally, I'll just say that we're navigating conflict and ensuring that communication is effective. You want to be empathetic. You want to foster an open dialogue. Let us both air our viewpoints. But like I said, communication can never be effective if the other person isn't ready to listen. And listening is a discipline. Oh my God. Especially when the person is going on and you have a lot of things to say, it's so hard. They're like, can I really sit down here? But you have to come to a space where you learn that you don't have to always be the one talking. Sometimes listen. So that's two. And the third one will be seek a common ground. There's always a common ground in every conflict, honestly. It's just like when we watch there's always a common ground in every conflict. So when you watch movies, you see that two countries or towns go to war, and then they find a common level ground and say, okay, we'll give our princess to you, your son will come to us, something like that, right? So there's always something to do to make the conflict over, but are you both ready to go through the process? That's the question. And finally, I'd say, like I mentioned earlier, focus on the solution rather than blame. We don't want to. My father used to do something when he's trying to solve problems with I and my siblings, and he'd say, he wouldn't come and say, so if something is broken, for instance, and they say, oh, it's Ebube that did it. He's not going to say, Ebube, why did you do it? He's like, who was around when he did it? Then when he's asking Ebube, he's not saying, why did you do it? He's saying, what were you doing when this thing broke? So you see, like, he's addressing the situation that led to the thing breaking, as opposed to, because it comes to start fighting, it will say, if we are a very naughty boy, you are very this, it will look for ways to defend himself. At that point, they will not be really willing to listen to what the other person has to say, even if it's not true. Yes. So focus on solutions rather than blame.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those wonderful tips. Focus on the solution rather than blame. Always have a common ground when communicating or trying to resolve a conflict, because that can really help. So let's move a bit away from, let's say, active listening and communication. Let's talk about public speaking a bit. So how can individuals tailor their communication style to better connect with diverse audience? But firstly, can you run us through like the different communication style before we now move into individuals tailoring their communication style to better connect with diverse audience?
Okay, thank you very much. So when it comes to communication styles, I'd say they're basically, for me, they're basically how you communicate. And we have communication with visuals, you have communication with words, you have communication with, so communication with visuals could come in place of using slides, using videos, motion graphics, content, and the likes. You have communication in print, where you have newsletters, you have magazines, and the likes. And communication in words, where you have your actual presentations, you have proposals, you have defense, and the likes, right? So when it comes to tailoring your communication style to diverse audience, you want to look at quite a number of things. Who are you addressing? What is the age grade or the age group of the people you'll be addressing? You want to look at what's the culture. So in Nigeria, some things might be acceptable, and in France, some things might not, right? So the way you address them way you could use some slang, some words. In another country, it might be insulting. So you want to confirm that what the words you're using is comfortable or it's okay for the background you're addressing. In general, you want to make sure that you understand your audience, that's who you're speaking to. You want to make sure that you understand the language of your audience. So this is a question that my students usually ask a lot, and that's the language of your audience. A lot of them are of the opinion that it's hard to understand the language of your audience. But what I usually say to them is this: to understand the language of your audience, you need to try a few things. One is, if you're speaking to, let's say, people in corporate, you want to go to one or two people in corporate that you know and just have a conversation similar to what you might be talking about at that presentation, right? Just throw in one or two questions and hear how they want to respond or what they have to say concerning that. It helps you understand the tone that they like to be addressed with, right? So similar to undergraduates, you could speak to undergraduates, and then have conversations with them. And that helps you understand their tone too. You then understand that, there's a slang like no grief for anybody. And you're like, when you now go to a presentation or a conference where you have to speak to undergraduates and you say no grief for everybody, you take their attention from 1 to 100 just because you use the language. So when it comes to communicating with diverse audience, you need to, beyond understanding who your audience is, you need to understand the language of your audience, your experience. You need to understand their language and their tone. Then finally, I would say make sure that your style of presentation is inclusive and respectful. So you don't want to come off with, if you're addressing, let me give an instance of an audience that includes Muslims and Christians, right? Now, in this situation, the presentation is not religious based, it's general, right? You don't want to make a statement that sounds offensive to the Muslims or sounds offensive rather to the Christians. So you want to make sure that you respect your audience viewpoints, their races, their gender. Don't say things that insult their person or their personalities. So that's very important. So the highlight or summary of this would be, like I said, understand your audience, understand their language and tone, prioritize inclusivity, and also respect for your audience.
Oh, very, very well said. Understanding the language of the audience is a very, very important point, because just like you said, imagine going to a conference where you have undergraduates mostly populated in that space, and they're using terminologies that they cannot easily relate to or resonate with. You're basically going to be talking to yourself in the room. So when you're able to come down to their level and use terms that they're conversant with, then just like you said, you can move their attention level from a 0 to 100, just like that, because you're able to use the terms that they understand. And with that, they can even understand what you're saying and you'll be able to effectively communicate with them. So you need to understand the language of the audience. Very, very valid point there. Thank you so much for expanding so much on that question. So let's, speaking about public speaking and anxiety, this is something that even those that are even public speakers themselves, we still face anxiety or fear from time to time, especially maybe if you have not been on stage for a long time or you have not spoken to a large crowd, maybe over the period of 2 to 3 months or even a month plus, so it could be very, what do I use to describe it? It could be very challenging sometimes, the fear and the anxiety. And then if public speakers are still having that challenge of anxiety and public speaking, then how much more those that are still willing to come into the public speaking space and they still battle with anxiety, fear, all of that from time to time. So how can we overcome communication anxiety
or fear of public speaking, because sometimes not that you don't know what to say or how to say it. You might have practiced a line. They said rehearse, repeat, rehearse, you rehearse, and then you go up on stage. To be honest, that thing happened to me today. I won't lie. Do you know that I was anchoring my church youth program today, part of the anchors rather. And so for the introduction, we had practiced, the line that we are going to say just to introduce the service and call people to worship, praise, and all of that. And I was the person supposed to start. So I started very well on a very good note. But then at the point where I finished, say, okay, turn to your neighbor from left to right, greet good morning to church, and good morning and welcome to church. Then I was supposed to now say give a very good introduction, something like, okay, today our sanctuaries are live with the energy and enthusiasm coming from the youth community. Even as the fellowship and worship God today, we are excited about the unique talents, the different faith journeys, and several perspectives of our young members. So imagine me saying it now, easily. But when I was on that stage, God in heaven knows that. I don't know how I just mixed up everything. To be honest, I was just saying what was just flowing into my brain at that point, because everything was not going seamlessly as I just said it right now. And I'm like, what is happening? But anyways, you don't have to make it known that maybe there's a problem. Even if some people maybe that might be very detailed, might notice a bit. But I just try to maneuver everything and still keep on check or keep track of what I was doing, stay put, basically. So that can happen. How do you overcome this communication anxiety or fear of public speaking? I won't say my own is fear of public speaking because I've been in the public speaking space, but let's say, I don't know if I should call it anxiety. But sometimes you get up on stage and then you, for a moment, forget something that you're supposed to say, and you just had to keep revolving or just say something just to put in place of what you were supposed to say. So what do you have to say about that?
Oh, well, wow. I'm sorry, but then it's just giving me a lot of memories. So like before I entered into public speaking professionally or generally, for starters, I struggled with the fear of public speaking for 5 years. And every time I say this story I don't think I've actually put it out there like that on social media per se, but because I've not really had the time to say this story. But the day I'll have the time, it was, I don't know. What did you say?
I said, please have the time and share. Most times people connect more with.
Okay, let me just say here then. So I don't know what exactly was going on in my mind, honestly. For about 5 years, I was like taking courses, watching YouTube videos. When people see me talk now, they feel like, you're so confident. Everywhere I go to, people just ask me, oh, sorry, what do? You talk so fluently, you talk so confidently. And I'm like, oh God, if only they knew. But it didn't used to be like this before. And for that period of 5 years, it was like a lot. Honestly, I'll be and I've been in leadership position for quite a number of times. In fact, I'll usually say throughout my entire life, because since I've been a child, I've always been in leadership positions. And now imagine someone that's a leader and you can't even speak to the people that you're supposed to be leading. Or when you're called out for like programs or to lead something, you're like, oh, sorry, I can't. I was always finding a way to run from these things because I was always afraid. And in the beginning, I felt like, okay, maybe because I didn't understand what to do. But then I took courses. I bet you when I say that, I took nothing less than 20 courses in this period. Aside from the YouTube tutorial videos that I watched back to back, but nothing worked. And that's why sometimes when I coach my students, I tell them the importance of personalized feedback. You cannot get it. You cannot sell it. You can't, how do I say, you can't exchange that. You can't miss that part. Like that's the most, why do you think that people watch videos on YouTube, people take courses, and there's no interaction with themselves and their coach or whoever is teaching, you end up just being like another person too who did not do anything about it, even though you've taken a lot of courses. Do you get? So you have to be in a space where you can actively practice, which is why I also tell my students that they should never miss an opportunity to be out there and let their voice be heard, because you can never get better at public speaking by sitting, just like you get better at driving by driving. You also get better at speaking by speaking. So don't run away from it. And aside from that, gradually, I now started like meeting people. I was also an introvert. So, I mean, that made it worse for me because I didn't even like to go out or anything. So it was really hard. So I started with non-living things in my house. I'll speak to them. I'll talk to them. I'll present to them.
And
And then I was still really young. Yeah. But it was really helpful for me. I wouldn't even lie. I started speaking to them. Then I started speaking to my siblings, teaching them. And I started teaching people in my neighborhood. And I don't know, before I knew it, I was just I was growing, and I'm like, okay, we're getting there. And then when I now started with big stages, when I now started going to like big stages to speak, it now felt like, okay, the fear is still here. I thought we left it already. But then you see that a lot of these things start crawling back, and you're afraid again because now it's a larger crowd. So I tell people that care to listen, as well as my students, that great speakers are not born, they are trained. You have to be willing to learn how to outgrow these things. And even the best of speakers still go through anxiety. But the reason why they're different from others, or why they're able to manage theirs, is because they've been able to train themselves to do so. And they've been able to do that through the guidance of someone, right? I attended a conference sometime late last year, and Vusi Tembakwayo was a speaker there. I really love listening to Vusi. Yes. He was a speaker there, and that was like the first time he came to Nigeria. Because before that day, he spoke at the platform by what's this man's name again? I've forgotten. But the platform, yeah. And then the next day, he now came to the event and spoke in the conference. I took the front row because I had to listen to this man. I've been following him online for a long time. I love his communication style. I love how he speaks, and he's very good at public speaking. I've listened to his story of his journey into public speaking and all of that. So he's great and a fantastic speaker. And then he did one thing in the beginning of his presentation, and he said, I'm so nervous right now, but I'm trying to smile so that we are all together in this. So I don't know whether he was really nervous or he was just trying to help us feel like, okay, we're not alone. But what he did at the beginning made everyone feel relaxed. I could see the change in atmosphere from the previous speaker who had spoken to us to when Vusi now took over. It was fantastic. And when I tell you that you can identify a great speaker from just somebody who is knowledgeable about a subject matter, they are not the same. Nah. They are not the same in any way. Because Vusi was able to carry the crowd along, and that's what you do as a great speaker. Your one role is make sure your audience is not lost at any point. When he did that, I can never forget those things he did. And I still apply them to like my event. I hosted an event sometime in October last year, and it had a mix of audience. So we had like secondary school students, because it was a mentorship symposium, and secondary school students came there to like learn. It was a mentorship program, like I mentioned. And then there were also like the younger ones, and then some adults too, and some speakers who joined virtually from foreign countries. So it was just a lot. And honestly, I was asking myself before the day of the event, how am I going to do this? Because I think that was like my first mixed audience per se, and also dealing with people that were online. I mean, I've had to deal with people online, but I think it wasn't exactly in that capacity. And I don't even know when he reached out to me, I just saw that, oh, sure, I can. But you'll not believe that I didn't prepare for the event till the day of the event. Every time I
Oh,
say nobody
really?
believes, I'm like, girl, you have to be lying. Cause everybody, till the last minute I was at that event, they kept saying, God, you did well. Even the speakers were like, you did amazing. I don't know, you're so good. And I'm like, okay, thank you. But I don't know
It's
what God
sometimes
did, but God did it. Because I got to
it's
the event.
it's
I
practice
usually
over
go.
the years.
Yeah,
Accumulated practice, basically.
exactly. And beyond that, I don't think I'd hosted an event because last year I had a lot of activities on my plate. So event
Mm.
hosting wasn't one of the things I did last year majorly. So that was practically my first. At other events I had, I was usually just speaking, right? So for that last year, that was like my first actual hosting event that year. So I've not hosted before then. So I can't even really say that it was because of practice. But I was determined if there was one thing, aside from the fact that I prayed to God to help me, because I just felt like blocked. Like, what's happening to me? Why am I not remembering anything? I had the speakers list, their bios, and I did not read anything. I was just looking at it. Nothing was entering into my head. And I'm like, okay, since
Can
this is how we're
imagine.
going, I, I almost said, God, let something happen to me so that they don't say that I killed their event. Because how do I tell the person few minutes or few hours to her event that, oh, I can't host this event because I don't seem to know what's happening to me? That would have been very, very bad. And I think I would have been
Yeah.
bitter for a long time. But I don't know how. Few minutes to the event, I spoke to one of the guys that were organizing and all. And I just asked him for a few things to see the things they changed because they made some mini changes and all. And then I just had like my pad where I was looking at them. And I was still, you need to see me serious. So anybody that saw me that morning will have said, oh, this lady, she must have been on her toes where. Funny part, the day before that day, I slept like a baby. It's how I slept like I had no worries. But if there was one thing I
Mm.
was sure of, I was there's no way God will allow me to go there and just be stranded. And then I just got to the event.
Mm.
After I looked at it again, I'm like, God, at this point, I don't know. My strength has failed me. Not like I have strength before, but help me. And I started praying around the event location. So sometimes, beyond like the things we practice and all, you need to walk in the spirit too.
Mm.
I don't know for people in like other religions that will also be listening to this. Whatever religion it is, you need to walk in the spirit. I mean, life in itself is spiritual. I don't know what was the cause of whatever made me feel blank because it had never happened to me. Like aside from the
Oh,
time when I was struggling with public speaking, but since I came into the understanding of what public speaking was, that had never happened to
actually.
me. I mean, it's different from saying, oh, you got up stage and maybe you missed a line or you were mumbling things. No, that's not really the case. Nothing was entering my head. It felt like I was being attacked, and I'm like, who did I offend, please? I started going around the entire event location, and I was just praying and praying, and before I knew it, it just felt like everything I've been reading just came to my head, and I'm like, okay, wait, oh, that's true.
Mm.
And I started conversing with the organizer, and I'm like, oh, this lady, when is she going to? This lady, wait. And I'm like, wait. This thing that did not enter my head, where did it come from? And that's how it
Mm.
just opened. And the event was seamless from there because we had a moderator. I had to speak with her, tell her how she's going to do her own part, how I'll communicate with her when her time is up. I spoke to like some of the speakers, greeted the moderator's parents, the host's parents, and all of that because she was like the organizer and all. It was just God, my God. I don't know, but it was good. It was good. At that point, it reminded me of 5 years ago, the time where I was struggling. And once it was consistent, I saw that every time I tried learning or practicing, if I didn't work on it at the moment, if I didn't actively practice or work on my mind, I went back to that same spot I was before. So in my
Mm.
just completed class, we had over 230 people register for the class. And in the class, I was telling the students that one thing with public speaking and the struggles, especially when it comes to anxiety, fear and fright, or you're trembling and all of that, most times it's a psych from your mind. You need to let your mind come to a space where you know that you're the best for this and you have been chosen because you are the one for it. I always tell my students that you have to come to an understanding that you have been chosen to do this because you are the best for it. Nobody put you there if you were not the best for it. Nobody accepted to make you a speaker in an event if they thought you couldn't. So if they trusted you enough to do it, then make your voice be heard. Go there and kill it. I don't want to hear from my students that they went to the stage and they were shaking. Why? What are you shaking for? The world is your... Step on it and make your voice be heard. That's the one thing I always talk about. Everywhere I go, you cannot be with me and you will not know how to make your voice be heard. It's important that we do so. Because at the end of the day, the world is picking people that are shining, not because they might even be the best or the best of the best in their fields, but because they've been able to speak up about it. If you don't speak up about what you're good at, nobody would know. People that you're not better at are there receiving awards. They're shining their lights as God had commanded. And you are there in dim, in darkness, just because your voice is not being heard. And that's my one goal. Make people's voices be heard. That's what I'm here to help you do. So I'd say that when you're dealing with this anxiety, in your case, for instance, I think it was probably stress or pressure from all of the things that you've had to deal with. Or sometimes when you're practicing, I don't know if it happens to you or if you feel it or if you understand what I'm about to say, but if you notice, there are times where you're practicing over and over again, at some point you feel like you're tiring yourself out. At that point, you have to stop practicing. You have to. Because when you consistently practice, what you're opening yourself up for is an opportunity to forget all that you've practiced. Because now you become tense as opposed to being balanced. The essence of you practicing so that you become familiar with what you want to talk about. But when you push yourself to the point that you are now tired in talking or tired of talking, then you're opening yourself up.
Then you lose everything.
Yes, you lose the whole essence of it. Practice is not supposed to be till you tire yourself out. No. You don't practice till you faint. You don't practice till you get tired. You practice, you rest, you pick it up again. You ask for feedback. Feedback is the most important part of practice. Every time you practice, you need to always get somebody. I had executive coaching with a guy that's a founder of a media company, and he was speaking to his staff someday, and he just realized that for some reason he started like fidgeting, and he was like, this doesn't make sense. I pay these people money, they're on my payroll. So how am I afraid of them? But at that point, it wasn't because he was afraid of them. First off, they've been stressed because of the events that came before that day. But it was also his mind. I tell my students that when it comes to its fears in public speaking, it starts with your mind. Fear is a mindset, you know. When you start seeing shadows, it's because you have thought of, you are alone in the room. You are the only one. There's no light. So your mind starts to play tricks on you and you start seeing things that are not there. That's where the fear comes from. Same way with public speaking. You get to a room and you see maybe top people or top personalities and you're like, whoa, this person is going to be here. And your mind already starts playing magic and says, you think you're even worth it. You think they want to listen to you. You think, and you just be thinking to you. So we had to, when he saw that that was not like the first time. He had something similar to that, but not exactly that scenario. Then he now looked for a public speaking coach on LinkedIn, and that was how he found me. And then we started our sessions. And he was like, he doesn't even want to do the course, that he has taken a lot of these courses and he gets it. They just talk about public speaking. I said, this is going to be different. If after our first session, you don't think it's different, tell me, I'll pay you your money back and you can go. Mm-hmm. Then we had our first session. And I'm like, so what do you have to say now? Because if you were there when he was saying what he said, it felt like everybody's just claiming to be a coach and what they're just teaching me the theory about public speaking, which in reality true, because I've attended quite a number.
That's what happens sometimes. You just get few people that are able to get you to practice, like on hands practice.
Exactly.
Like this hand, but voice.
So basically, had that, and then he was like, "Oh wow, this is better than what I thought," and it got better through the next session and the next and the next, like that.
Exactly.
So practice in public speaking is not supposed to be one time. It's not supposed to be one-off. So don't get to a point where you tire yourself out. You will not get better just because you 10 hours at a stretch. It's a lie. You're playing. You are going to be stammering. You're going to be stuttering because you have practiced so much. You have stressed your mind. Everything about this fear, these struggles we face, generally, even depression in itself, all of this, it's mindsets. It starts from your mind, what you conceive in your heart. You process to your, and your mind starts to play what's to you. You start shaking. You start feeling like you're not worth it. People don't want to hear your voice and all of that.
Yeah, mindset is like an engine. Controls your action.
It was very, very helpful. But that's just to say that anxiety in itself requires a whole lot beyond practicing. You need to reframe your mind, psych your mind. Be with some person that can actively help you with feedback, immediate feedback. You need support. You need a support system and you need feedback. That's the most important part. These struggles. Yes.
Yeah, so that has to do with accountability partner, having someone that you can be accountable to and someone that can be accountable to you, whatever way, vice versa. But just like you said, personalized feedback is a very important factor in public speaking. In Toastmasters, they usually say feedback is a breakfast for champions. So there's a difference between feedback and advice. Feedback is more like information. Advice is more like opinion. So they are very distinct, and the information is supposed to help you become better, help you improve on what you already have and make you a better person at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah. And when it comes to that, so when I'm advising you, I'm saying something like, oh, you did a really nice job, though you could do better. It should be nice. People want to hear you speak better. People want you to. But when I'm giving you a feedback, I'm saying that your introduction was very apt, but next time you could start with facts.
Exactly.
Be specific with the solution that can help me tackle that challenge that you saw. That's feedback.
That's information. Wow, it has been a very amazing session this evening, and I'm super excited to have you speak on this topic, effective communication or communicating effectively, and all that around that, public speaking, active listening, resolving conflict in a better way, because there's always the banter part, but how better do we get to communicate effectively, even in conflicts? And you have been able to walk us through that journey of everything as regards public speaking and effective communication. And I must say that you are good at what you're doing. Just keep on the good works. And I might just have to enroll in your class. I never can tell. I think I've sent you a message already on WhatsApp, so please hook me up. I'm willing and ready to learn at any time and improve what I already have, what I'm already doing currently. So I don't mind. There's always room for improvement and development. On that note, Chinecherem,
It's super exciting once again. Thank you so much for coming on the show. The Cast with Nia loves and appreciates you. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of self-development and growth. Remember that your journey is your own, and every step you take is a step towards your unique emergence. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Remember, your feedback means the whole world to us. Stay connected with us on all our social media handles at the Cast with Naya podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Until then, keep emerging, keep growing, and keep shining bright.